Open Notepad. Open neon something. Good. It infers. I swear an NPC just knocked another NPC out. Moonshot AI has released Kimi K2.6, and when I say released, I really mean it because this model is currently on Hugging Face, and we can see right here that if you do have a simple system that can handle this 600GB total download size, you will be able to run this locally. Now, regrettably, I don't currently have said system, so we're going to be testing this today, just probably using the web chat interface, as I like to think of that as basically like taking a car out for a test drive. You get a feel of what it's capable of, and in a wide variety of different things, depending on what sort of test drive you like to do. Regardless of that, let's go ahead and take a peek at some of the introductory information or points of interest for this model, and then we'll get to some fun and light testing. So before we get into it, I do also want to say, please feel free to subscribe if you'd like, as I do want that 100K plaque. Now let's take a look at some of the interesting things in the updates for Kimi K2.6, starting with our key features. So we can see right here that it has apparently significantly improved across end-to-end coding tasks, generalizing robustly across programming languages, and they do mention things like Rust, Go, and Python. I generally probably only will test Python out of that list of 3 languages, but it is also good to know the additional ones are improved as well. We also have a coding-driven design. It is capable of transforming simple prompts, I like that, and visual inputs, I also like that, into production-ready interfaces and lightweight full-stack workflows. I don't know why I'm reading this verbosely back to the viewer. I do apologize because I try not to do that. They also talk about the agent swarm feature. Now, I don't know if I have access to that on this specific plan because I am genuinely signed up for this myself. I paid to test the beta coding model that came out last week, though they do offer me like, here, you can use this code and then get access to all this stuff, but I don't like doing that in my testing videos because I want to test the model in the same plans that the viewers would actually be able to use it with, so please keep that in mind. They also do mention the concept of this being able to power like persistent 24/7 autonomous tasks, which is interesting, as if you are on X, you may be able to see folks talking about leaving agents running overnight and things like that. I should also mention that Elon Musk reposted one of my Grok results, which was pretty interesting, so I will put a screenshot of that here as influencer status. Now, of course, in terms of some more technical specifications and benchmarks of the sort and things, this is a 1 trillion total parameter model. It is a mixture of experts, so it does have 32 billion active. Then we have some additional information right here about the model. The context length is 256, which is quite sufficient, although I think a lot of frontier models have been stretching beyond that lately, though I don't know how context is past that for models that say they support like 1 million or something of the sort. So just something to make note of. And additionally to that, we do also have a dedicated blog release post on the Moonshot or Kimi.com website where they have some nice visual benchmarks right here. And we can see, because I was wondering which version of Claude is this, being that 4.7 did just come out. So when we hover over these, we see all of the specifics of the model runs that were benchmarked here. So this is being shown against Opus 4.6, as well as Gemini 3.1 Pro and GPT-5.4 on X High, which is its highest reasoning mode for the 5.4 model. Interestingly to see, and again, I don't really pay too much mind to these specific benchmarks, but this model does seem to be stacking up very, very favorably against these other models. Personally, I'd like to see some information here against like GLM 5.1 and things like that, but regardless, we should be expecting some pretty potent results for today's test. And I want to quickly touch upon, there are obviously a bunch of examples here of things it's made pretty front ends and a bunch of other different things that you can see right here, as well as some more verbose benchmarks with even footnotes talking about specific things. I want to point out one specific example here because I think this is one of the most impactful agentic examples that I've seen in a model announcement post, where essentially it successfully downloaded and deployed the Qwen 3.5 0.8b, so an 800 million parameter model, on a Mac. By implementing and optimizing local inference in Zig, a highly niche programming language, it demonstrated exceptional out-of-distribution generalization, basically meaning it was not specifically trained to perform this exact task, but it did a fantastic job on it. And they're saying that it was able to improve throughput massively, and they just have some additional information right here. So the point of this that I find interesting is this is a real demonstration of its performance in being able to do something that is far more agentic and a task that would run over a while autonomously. And these sorts of examples are definitely things we're going to be seeing more of from various labs across all different types of like manufacturers, I guess could be said simply. So without wasting any further time, I think we all know what's next, which is to swap into the web thing, where I see they have not specifically changed the initial sample text there that says, throw me a hard one, I'm ready. But with that, we are going to, in fact, throw it a hard one in the form of the Browser OS test version 2.5, where it is basically the same as all previous ones. It needs to create a Browser OS with 5 specific applications, though this has to include a functional 3D GTA clone, as well as another game that it can decide on, which must be 3D as well. Now, unfortunately, it seems like we've encountered a hiccup in that everything just stopped, so regrettably, I will hit the retry button. Oh, I thought it was going to continue where it left off. That was something you had to do like with the first like day one ChatGPT when it first came out in late 2022. It would not generate like a full script in one go. So you'd have to say to it like continue script from where previously left off and fun little tricks like that. And then it would more or less generate the full script. So it's just funny seeing the progression of like capability across things. Interesting. Little anecdote. All right, let's take a look at our Browser OS. Okay, on first glance, the update is back. I will update this quicker. We do have a clock and date in the bottom right, which is showing the correct time and date in my locale. So let's see, obviously the unspoken thing to test, does it have a right click? And it does. That is very good. I'm happy to see that. And again, this test has been around. I see a lot of folks experimenting with this. So I'm not saying that to be like, I came up with this, you stole it, even though that's true. But what I'm saying that to be like is that it's likely made its way into training data for a lot of models. So keep that in mind, but it's always fun to look at this and see how they progress. So let's begin just by testing our start menu. Good, everything is there. Voice command, that could be interesting. We do also have hover effects over the icons, and we'll run through them top down. Folder, can we create a folder? We can. Can we go in the folder? So we have a little emulated file system right here, that's good. Very good, okay, and it opens our exe file in the notepad. Regardless, not bad. We have a welcome.txt, welcome to Chrome OS. Okay, there may be some copyright issues with that specific name, but double-click icons to launch apps, and we do have a README as well. Okay, I'm pleased so far. Let me close out of these. Our next app is actually this notepad, so we'll just open it again. Hello. And when we save, does it save it to a text file, or would it just save it locally? Okay, so it doesn't seem like the save is really doing anything, which I suppose is okay. Can we resize these windows? All right, I'm not seeing the option to. Can we full screen? We can. Can we unfull screen? We can. Minimize to the taskbar and then reopen. Good. Next up, we have our Abacus calculator. Interesting. So let's do 84 times 6. 504. Now for the exciting one that I have been eager to try. All right, Steady Rampage. WASD is to drive, space is to break, and R is to reset. So I'm wondering, I mean, the obvious question here would be, oh, okay. Oh, and now I am wanted. Oh, wow. Okay, there's the police. Space is to break. Good. Okay, it did. Yep, and then our wanted level goes up as we do knock down those capsules. All right, the police logic is interesting because we can almost see some lighting indicative of like flashing sirens and the associated lighting they would have. I'm trying to get 5 stars, but it's difficult. Okay. Peds, 20. Okay, so it doesn't seem like the police catching us actually does anything. Overall, it's 3D, there's a city, there's capsules and things like that. Acceptable. All right, this was our, like, it's up to you 3D game. Neon Void, not bad. Now, apparently I had neglected to figure out when doing the Grok test that you actually had the ability to shoot at the asteroids. I will not make that mistake again. Okay, nice. And this is 3D, though it's simple. This is almost like a 3D transposition of, like, Space Invaders, I feel like, and it's kind of cool. Goal, survive. I like that. Very relatable. Next up, we have our settings. And again, in keeping with the more modern theme where they just put gradients as background instead of specific pictures, we do have that. I think I like this one. Yeah, cyberpunk, but they're all cyberpunk, I guess. But that's okay. I like this one the best. So pretty simple settings, but not bad. Okay, next up, we have voice command. Okay, and this is showing me here like something indicative of this will actually work. So let's try Open City Rampage. Open City Rampage. It's pretty crazy that the Grok 3 result Grok 4.3 and this both had like basically this exact specific feature. And I demoed it the same way by saying like OpenGTA or whatever they happen to name it. So that's really cool to see. Oh, still listening. It had transcribed what I was saying. Wow. Okay, so this is supposed to listen, I think, just in the background as an accessibility feature. And apparently it can tell us what time it is, so let's try that. Time.
The time is 12 hours, 26 minutes, and 8 seconds p.m.
Open About OS. That was fast. Open Calculator. Open File Explorer. Open Notepad. Open Neon something. Good. It infers. Oh yeah, I can hear me. Shut down. Shut down. Restart. Quit. 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 Okay, so that was actually pretty cool. The voice feature was nice, and overall this was a satisfactory result, but nothing here really like blew my pants off, I guess could be said. I don't think that's a term. Blew my socks off. That's what I meant to say. That's great. I'm gonna have to cut that. All right, so for the next one, and I'd initiated this prior to looking at the previous result just so we can get more on the same time scale. I'm still laughing at the phrase. It's the static subway scene result where it needs to make a beautiful detailed static subway station scene. Now what I always do with this when it gives us as a result is even before looking at it say, haha, awesome, now turn it into an FPS. And as we embark it on that task to turn this into an FPS, we'll take a look at the subway station result. Station, I do hope this works being that I told it to turn it into an FPS. Okay, click anywhere to enter. Let me check the developer tools as it seems we may have some error. Okay. All right, it needs an import map. I'll just fix this manually. Refresh this page. Good. Very nice. Floating particles, I'm going to say off the bat, this is going to make a really awesome FPS map, assuming that does get properly implemented. Something I would like to make note of is that it's not super detailed in terms of there's no benches, there's no signs or anything like that. Okay, and there's a bench right as I say that, and there's a sign. Forget everything I just said. What I was going to say is, though, this is one of the more detailed subway cars that I have happened to have come across in one of these tests. So this is nice to see. And we do have a trash bin there. We have some additional things, some lighting. I'll say the tiles don't look bad. They're neatly arranged, and there really is a lot of floating particles here. There are a lot, I should say. Okay. Now we need to check to see if the brightness slider works, and this is something that continuously is like a gotcha for these models, is it will be locked behind the initialization of being in this UI, so we basically have to click to enter, and then that hides our mouse, meaning we can't actually access the brightness slider, and this is something that is pretty often overlooked in this test, so interesting to see just a point of failure from within. It's like an emergent test, so to speak. Though, not bad. Let's see what happens when we have it create the FPS, which I will inevitably have to add the import map into as well. All right, now let's take a look at our Subway first-person shooter. Okay, Subway Outbreak. Uh-oh. I tried moving and then... Okay, we have noise for the ammunition. Let me try moving the opposite direction. Nope. Okay, so as soon as we move, it goes to a black screen, which is frustrating, but we'll give it the chance to fix this. So we're telling it to fix this result. So here's our hypothetically fixed Subway FPS, first and foremost. Okay, well, the black screen issue is no longer there because, quite frankly, I can't move. It's set me to a static position. I'm hitting WASD, I'm hitting the arrow keys. This is really frustrating because I'll say the particle effects and things like that do seem pretty cool. Just the... Okay, it's specifically mentioned 5.56 NATO rounds in the ammo, which is very, very a level of detail I've not often seen in these tests. We do have tracer effects, though there is no visible weapon, and I'm not able to see any recoil, therefore. Oh, and I was out of ammo. Okay, so we're probably about to lose. Okay, this is, it's a little frustrating. Oh. Because it could have been very, very good had we just had the ability to move, which suddenly is no longer there. So I'm a little frustrated by that, but regardless, we're going to keep going. Next up is going to be the 3D Python FPS test to see if it's able to do some Python, where it needs to have a functional minimap that shows the player as well as the enemies, visible ammunition tracers. It is also told to not use Ursina so that we get to see a more quote-unquote raw mathematical way of it implementing this. So here's our Python 3D FPS. Okay, unfortunately we did get an error here, and for this let's just pretend that like I am OpenCode, where I'll send it back the error for it to fix So let's try to see if our Python FPS has been fixed. Okay, it has not, and truthfully, I am a little frustrated, so here's what we're going to do. I have also just configured this in OpenCode, and I'm going to say fps.py is broken, fix it. So, and we see right here the initial test that I'd sent it, or the initial prompt was, what is your model slug? And it responds moonshot Kimi K2.6, just so we can see that this is in fact using the new K2.6 through OpenCode, and then hopefully this will give us some clarity in our result. Good, so it did fix the issue, and after a few different tries, and this is why I just wanted to get it working in OpenCode, because aside from just having to go back and forth a million times in the browser chat, we can do this instead. Okay, now it looks pretty decent, though I'm noticing, is the ammo going in the wrong direction? Our health bar does work. Okay. I think it's just not really properly shooting these enemies, but the whole point was more almost just to see how it goes about drawing this map and things like that, the enemies and all of the other specific denoted features in the absence of being able to use Ursina or something. So overall, this is a decent looking map. There are enemies, and some of the logic is a little funky in terms of actually, okay, that was the first time I actually managed to hit one of them. We saw it flashed white there, and okay, well, something. Next up, we're going to test its multimodal coding capability, so we are of course giving it the hand-drawn wireframe for the portfolio website of Stevie Slappis, and I've given it the prompt to turn this into a high-end portfolio designed to get this person hired at a top AI or machine learning company. It should include real impressive AI concepts directly in the page with a high-end aesthetic that looks like a YC startup. Now we can see that was a very, very quick chain of thought comparatively to what we have seen prior in all of the tests we've run, so I'll be interested to see how it goes about doing this, and if it does actually implement some AI type of experiments or something in the code. So here's our portfolio wireframe image. This is nicely done, I do have to say. I like this hero section. This is like very modern, like YC startup looking hero section, at least in terms of the font and the font size. It has read it as TV Lapis, which is a pretty common one, and in lieu of any pictures, it just put the, I can't believe I'm forgetting the terminology for this. It put the initials of the individual, 5 years experience, 12 papers, and 3 patents. And we do have a bunch of funky background effects there. Okay, as we scroll down, these do hover in, and we do have nice hover effects for these specific things. Although I would say the emojis here is perhaps a bit low rent, considering that this is designed to be a top AI candidate wireframe, or portfolio, I should say. Okay, now this is more impressive. This is very cool. It is giving us a live attention visualization right here. I'm a machine learning engineer obsessed with the boundary where theoretical research meets practical impact, training billion parameter models to optimizing neural networks for edge devices. I led the infrastructure to Series B startup, 40% latency reduction, 1 billion plus per RAM strain, 50 models deployed, and a state-of-the-art accuracy. This is pretty cool, though not necessarily interactive, but it is a nice little visual draw, I suppose could be said, and what I did want to see. This is very, very weird and almost distracting, but I kind of like it. It implemented some matrix rain effect here in the contact card, which I've never seen, but it is limited to only the contact card, so it did a good job there. We have email, LinkedIn, and GitHub, and the hover effects on these are nice, built with neural networks and caffeine, so kind of keeping in the thing that if you are a software engineer, you are likely addicted to caffeine, so that's good. Overall, simple, but not bad at all. I have never seen such garbage. Even if that's not entirely true, let's just see how it goes about giving this a second chance. All right, let's take a look now after I called the result garbage. Okay, this is... this is garbage. The other one wasn't. I mean, I can see the direction that it had attempted to take here in just making it like a simple lightweight card that got the point across quickly, and Though I have to say, based in San Fran, I'm disappointed with this one comparatively, so maybe the mean feedback that wasn't really warranted was not necessarily the right way to go about doing this. Interesting though. Oh, killed the sci-fi, real ML concept, exact wireframe structure preserved. You know what? I have to eat my words then, because we have to remember we kept it based off of this, so essentially this is garbage, the hand-drawn wireframe, so it made it look more like that, therefore leading it to garbage. So that is actually a good result then that it gave us. That's interesting, and I failed to properly figure that out and judge that, so I have to amend my previous statement. That was more true to the wireframe. Now, I've noticed that some folks in a few of the previous tests had been missing the Flight Combat Simulator game, so we're going to do that now, and we'll see how well it's able to pull off making these plane models, the enemy logic, the combat, and the terrain. So here's our plane simulator result. Okay, the propeller ace is curious. Fighter jet, and then heavy gunship. Okay, this is a very unique take on the preview of each of these individual jets, and I hope it does not transfer into the actual game. Okay, it doesn't. Uh-oh. We've had a momentary freeze, which seems to have been fixed. It's neat, I guess, is a word I was looking for. Okay, there's an enemy. See if I can get to them. So the entirety of this is controlled via the mouse in terms of the actual plane movement, but I can adjust the speed by pressing W. I'm going to have to restart this. Let me try a slower plane. Okay, good. There's an enemy. It seems like we get a momentary freeze and then it... Oh. Okay, something's not quite right here. I'm going to have it fix this just from within the web chat. So I just gave it the feedback of the description of the issue where it basically freezes up, but I also did tell it that the plane model previews are laughable. So here's the attempted fix of the plane game. Okay, it did still keep the 2D planes, but it still has that freezing issue. So I don't know what to make of that, but I'm going to call that a failure to fix the result. And because of that, I want to now go into OpenCode. It's better to look at OpenCode from like within a browser OS background. It makes things prettier. So let me close these. So now in OpenCode, I have put it in plan mode and we're giving it the self-contained C++ skateboarding test. But this is the version where it needs to make it a retro California boardwalk aesthetic with NPCs and buildings and things and like an environment to skate around in. So we'll see how it does. Now, again, I have begun this from within plan mode just so it can plan out what it's going to do, and then we'll allow it to build. Everything I've seen here in just quickly looking over, okay, any questions before I start? And I'm telling it endless free skate, graphics up to it, and it can implement sounds if it would like. All right, it has some additional questions, but because the last one says, should I proceed? And I'm purposely not answering the second question because, I don't know, I just wanted to build the thing, so I've swapped it into build mode now, and it's going to begin to do so. All right. We did finally get a successful compilation, and inevitably this will close in a second, but still, that is promising. So after a little bit and some troubleshooting, we have our skate game. I have turned the speaker on because it did, of course, say we had sound. This is kind of neat, actually. If we look the other way, there's a building and things of the sort. Let's... Okay. We can go a bit fast, which space is to ollie, hold to charge. It actually has a realistic, so to actually perform an ollie, you don't just vertically jump with the board. You actually have to pop the back of the board and the board comes up and then you slide 1 foot forward and it levels out in air. And that's how it ollies. So this is actually a more realistic ollie effect than I think I've ever seen in a result. I do like this. Okay, so these palm trees are floating in midair. There's definitely some oddities to the arrangement of certain aspects here, but let's see if we can get on the rail. We have to pop though. Okay, dismount. Oh. Aw, we fell. Good, so it did implement that fail, basically. Let's try. This is actually kind of difficult because you have to properly charge the ollie, and then in the time you jump up, you have to engage the trick. This is difficult. All right, overall, this was interesting because it wasn't necessarily the best one I've seen, but at the same time, some of the movement effects, like look at the lean and things, were more realistic in terms of actually needing to pop to do the ollie, and it's more difficult to play as a lot of times you bail. So an interesting boardwalk, the buildings and things like that. Overall, definitely showing promise. Another test that some folks had mentioned missing in some of my previous videos was, of course, the 3D printer simulation, so I figure we'll try that as well. So here's our 3D printer simulation result. Okay, let me zoom out. Oh, I hate the fog so much because this looks like a pretty promising result. We even have a filament spool up there. The reason I say this looks promising is because we do see the dual like Z motors with the Z screw as well. This is more in line with how a bed slinger printer would look. Okay, so I'm starting the print, and right now this is probably a candidate for fastest bed slinger printer in existence. I'm going to slow the simulation speed down as much as possible, where we see this is still extremely fast, but it is in fact a bed slinger, and we actually do see the material for the bed rails as well, which are metallic. We have what I would believe to be a screen here, so I want to take a peek at something if I can get there without the fog. I was just going to check if the spool was actually spinning. I do not believe it is, but sometimes that's something that gets implemented, and we do have our shape that was created layer by layer. So let's try the circle now. Okay, we see it. The nozzle is moving properly, and that's actually cool because the bed and the nozzle both seem to be moving in the correct kind of mathematical implementation that would produce a shape in real life if the printer was moving that way, so that's good to see. And this one does not seem as... Okay, no, it is. It's extremely fast. Now, interestingly, the triangle does appear to be invisible. Let's reset and try once more. Okay. But we kind of can see where it would have been printing. So overall, this was not bad. It did have like the proper math implementation, I suppose, and the fog was a bit frustrating, but it did work on first try, no issues. So next up, because I want to just run a ton of different tests with this is the test to do Jerry's apartment from the show Seinfeld. So we've given it this photo and then told it to create an accurate model of the apartment from Seinfeld, Jerry's apartment, including nuanced details such as this bike on the wall, the vintage Mac in the corner, and other specific things. So we can see now this has initiated a web search, and by default, the behavior here for web search, if you hover over it, is auto. So it will browse the web when it needs to, which it has decided it should right here. And that is nice to see because it will help it kind of identify some information or specific items to include. All right, so let's take a peek at our Jerry's apartment, building apartment 5. Okay, first and foremost, let's see. Good. This looks promising so far, but let's enter. You even put people? I don't think I've ever seen people placed in. Okay, we have some interesting things. We have orbit controls active, which are okay because then we can move around. We have the green bicycle. We do have 4 people in here, so I would assume we have Jerry, George, Elaine, and Cosmo Kramer. We do have the vintage Mac over in the corner as well as the bookshelf. We have a blue-green couch and a kitchen area. Now, of course, this is not really true to the actual layout of the apartment as it would be in reality, though. We can kind of see, hey, that's a bathroom over there, isn't it? So let's go in there. Okay, not bad. There are seemingly different rooms, and we do have the bedroom now as well. I do also believe there's an attempt of some poster on the wall right there that says Memphis, I believe. Or yes, it does. So it's unfortunately covered up by these top cabinets, but interesting to see how the models differ in this task because they do always do some research as well. So this was interesting. So next up, we're going to do some creative writing. I've given it this photo and said, this is the cover for an upcoming book. Give me the title and a brief overview of it, meaning the overview of the book. Searching with image. Okay. Is it searching to try to find this book? Find similar images and identify the book. That's very interesting. So it's almost treating this as a knowledge, like question-answer retrieval test, where it's thinking it needs to actually find this book in real life and then provide me the title based off of that. Overweight? So I've just told it. It was a creative writing test, you absolute imbecile. Because when it was actually searching for the title of this book, we can see some of the search terms it used. Overweight. And then a bunch of like title. The weight of his good days. That's great. That's just wonderful. Velvet Revere, Love on a Couch in Silence. That would have been way better, but for some reason it went with The Weight of His Good Days. A literary novel about Margaret and David, a couple in their late 30s who have built a quiet life in a Rust Belt town. When Margaret begins experiencing episodes of severe depression and memory loss, David responds with relentless optimism, documenting their life in photographs where he smiles and she cannot. The novel unfolds through alternating perspectives. Okay, that's kind of cool. David's desperate attempts to hold their world together through cheerfulness and routine, and Margaret's increasingly fragmented tormented interior life as she grapples with a diagnosis that threatens to erase the woman he fell in love with. Set against the faded wallpaper and dim light of the home they've shared for 15 years, the weight of his good days is an unflinching portrait of caregiving, the loneliness of being loved too hard, and the question of whether a marriage can survive when only one person remembers why it started. Wow, that's depressing. I forgot I had caps on, but it doesn't quite make a difference for my follow-up. Okay. Title: Smile for the camera, Linda, as it has offered to write this as a rom-com instead. Linda hates having her photo taken. Her husband, Gary, loves taking photos of everything, constantly. That's disturbing. Usually at the exact moment Linda is mid-blink or remembering a minor humiliation from 2003. When a local news crew mistakes their awkward anniversary portrait for profound artistic commentary on modern marriage, they accidentally become the face of a citywide art campaign. Now Gary and Linda have to keep up the charade, her looking deeply melancholic, him beaming like a golden retriever, while navigating nosy reporters, a rival couple trying to steal their spotlight, and the creeping suspicion that their fake artistic dynamic might actually be revealing some real truths. Hilarity, poorly timed flash photography, and unexpected emotional growth ensue. Give the names of the competing couple. Braden and Chloe Voss-Harrington. She had the umlaut legally added at 23. They own a minimalist toast bar called Burnt and have been practicing curated vulnerability since before it was mainstream. Their signature look is matching oatmeal linen, and they keep trying to one-up Gary and Linda by staging increasingly dramatic, unposed portraits around town, until it all culminates in a public meltdown at the annual Art in the Park Festival involving a sourdough starter and a drone camera. Okay, well, aside from the initial extreme infuriation of the weight references, this was not bad. It did, creative writing does exist in this model's repertoire of skills. So next up, I've gone to ultimateplay.com, which is my own website where I do post certain game results from different models. But additionally to that, I do also post the prompts, and anyone can actually post on here. So if you do go to ultimateplay.com, you will see in the homepage right here that there's a bunch of different uploads from a bunch of different folks, which makes me quite happy. So anyone can upload a game, but there is an agent moderation queue just to make sure nothing weird gets up there. So our next step is going to be to use one of those prompts found here, which is to create a game called Bistro Brawlers. It's a low poly bistro with nuanced detail. Essentially, it's going to be like a first-person beat-em-up style game in a restaurant, and we'll see how it does here. So let's take a look at our Bistro Brawlers game. Okay, and the prompt says it needs to be a $1.99 game for Steam. So, okay, not bad, except it messed up the camera view. So where the camera's here's what I'm going to do actually. In this case, because this is able to see things, I'm going to actually send it a photo of exactly what's going on, as well as a slight description, and we'll see if it can fix it. I spelled jittery wrong, but it should very likely understand, and we'll see what we get as a fixed result. All right, so let's take a look at our supposedly fixed result. Very, very good. This is exactly what I was hoping to get. And the spacebar now does punch. Though, oh yeah, okay, so we have some combat effects. I'm going to say the actual environment here is not bad either. Are the NPCs fighting each other? I swear an NPC just knocked another NPC out. Yeah, they are. Okay, so we have a rematch here. Why does Steve have I think it's a chef hat. It's just yeah, look, when they collide, they basically take damage and then they end up sideways on the ground like that. That's actually kind of hilarious. Okay. Shift is to sprint. Oh yeah. So here's the non-sprint, here's the sprint. Let's just go in and start slapping on them. E is to pick up and drop. Oh, here's a pan. Okay, we did take the pan. Nope, we didn't. We did not pick that up. Let me find something else to. All right, overall, regardless if I can't seem to get any knockouts here, this was definitely not bad. This is kind of what I had hoped. I mean, the animations of the people walking are not bad. The legs actually have some movement. There are definitely fight logic combat, as we saw earlier, where the NPCs were engaging in fights. So this was kind of the ideal result where I too envision it in my head. We even have some nice wooden rafters in the ceiling and lights, so pretty cool. So for the final test, we're going to try the drum kit simulation test with the addition of the autoplay feature, where it must have 4 specific tracks that it will autoplay or loop with this drum kit. So here's our drum kit simulator. Okay, so they don't always get arranged properly, as we can see right here, but something I'm going to make note of for this specific result is the lighting looks good. when we spin, at least in this direction. And something else, the actual quality of the materials used and the way the drums are drawn is actually definitely there. What I mean by that is if we look, if I can try to get the angle right so the lighting shows us, the actual pieces outside the shell that would be present in the real drums are actually there, and they're pretty well done. So that's something I like to see. We also have the closed hat. Okay, though it doesn't seem like that one is making noise, which is frustrating. No open hat. We do have the high tom. We have the floor tom. No crash and no ride. So the cymbals aren't working, which is frustrating and somewhat limiting. However, let's try the autoplay to see if the cymbals work there. I don't imagine they would, but you never know. So the cymbals don't work, which is frustrating, and it should likely fix those pretty simply. So here's our supposedly fixed result, and the first thing to check is just whether or not the cymbals work. Unfortunately, they're still not working. So that is a detraction, and to be honest with you, I'm going to just call that one a failure then, as I did give it a chance to fix this, regrettably. So overall, that's going to conclude our first look and test of the newly released Kimi K2.6 model. Starting with the browser OS, of course, I do think the winner here was definitely the voice command feature, because other things have implemented them, but the actual way in which this did this, where it was continuously listening as to almost act as some form of accessibility assistant, was pretty darn cool, and I liked that, and it could also speak the time to you and things of the sort. So overall, of course, a solid result as one would expect from this model. We then had our Subway FPS game, and this was curious because it was really potentially very good. The biggest issue was that we couldn't actually move, and that was after a first result that needed to be fixed, where when we tried to move, we unfortunately just got a black screen. So it fixed it, and like everything here was, it's actually pretty cool. It just needed a couple tries there. Then we had our Wireframe to Portfolio site, where we gave it 2 different attempts after basically getting this, which was quite nice, and it did have this cool attention visualization. I told it it was garbage, which it wasn't, and then it gave us this, which was kind of garbage, but then its reasoning was because this was closer to the original Wireframe we had given it, which did actually make sense, and therefore kind of got it off the hook for what was potentially a bad result, because it kept it more true to the Wireframe. So that was actually okay to see. Next up, we had another kind of frustrating result, which was our plane result, where we tried firing at these other planes and it would kind of freeze and glitch out there. And I did again, I gave it a chance to try to fix this, and unfortunately we still had the same issue, though it did improve the 1 or 2D things we saw there. So if we find the actual, this was the second plane result, we can see that these actually did change to a more reasonable mock-up. But again, we had the kind of freezing up. The 3D printer sim was fine. It did make a bed slinger that did seem to have accurate true-to-life movements and how a bed slinger printer would actually be printing in terms of the movement of both the nozzle and the bed, so that was good to see. Our Seinfeld's apartment was not like the proper layout of the real apartment, but so far none of the models have ever done that. Though if we judge this individually as a scene, it was quite nice. It had the nice couches, it had the bike there, so it did do some understanding there, as well as the vintage Mac, the bookshelf, and even the bathroom and the bedroom if we do move the camera around the scene to those specific rooms. So that was cool to see, and not bad at all. We had our Bistro Brawlers, which after a first attempt that had some glitches, the second attempt here was just fun and quite good. Second chance, the cymbal sounds just didn't quite work. So I would have expected it to have properly fixed that after the feedback that they did not work. Of course, we had our skate game as well, and this was very interesting because this was perhaps one of the more... That's so weird. That's like the same sound mapping from the drum set result. That's so... It's just odd. But this was really cool because this was all in C++. And again, we did this in OpenCode. And the thing that was neat about this was you actually had to kind of charge up the ollie. Instead of just pressing space and having the whole human and board move up and down, it actually had to be more kind of realistic. And the tricks were pretty hard to land. And if you didn't land them right, you actually would bail as we see right there, the player falls. So this was a more realistic kind of implementation of how tricks and things would be performed in real life, which was interesting to see. So overall, that is going to conclude our first look and test of the brand new Kimi K2.6 model, which is of course here on Hugging Face as well for anyone who has the ability to run this locally. Of course, it is a very good model. It's very large. And I noticed the one thing that kind of bothers me is it seems like some of the results we got needed additional tries to make them perfect, which I didn't necessarily go into this anticipating, though it did of course showcase some pretty potent potential capabilities, which is always nice to see, being that this is one of the larger and most performant open source models. I mean, truthfully, this is probably currently the best open source model that exists, which is kind of exciting to see, especially when it is also here available with open weights on Hugging Face for anyone who actually has the ability to run it. So overall, I wanted to of course jump on this and test it just to get a feel for how it performs across a variety of different things. And yeah, that's going to conclude it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments or in the Discord, and thanks for watching.